Hi, my name's Scott Anderson. I'm the managing editor of NextBillion, and I'm here with Ted London. Ted, who works down the hall from me, he's the senior research fellow and director of the Base of the Pyramid Research Initiative at the William Davidson Institute. Ted, it's good to see you here in the confines of the studio. We're here to talk a little bit about an upcoming summit that you have planned. It's called the BoPeace Summit 2013, Creating an Action Agenda for the Next Decade, and it's coming up in October. But in a nutshell, can you tell me a little bit about the goals of the summit and what you hope to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, the big goals are to build a community that can take the domain even further. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to bring together leaders from the corporate side, the nonprofit side, the entrepreneur side, the development side, to really take stock of where the domain is now, identify and understand what's worked well and how we can amplify that, and also identify the challenges and the roadblocks that we still face and begin to explore how we can address those.
Mm-hmm. And the key element is taking stock of what we know thus far about the BOP domain, which is a big subject to tackle. And it's nothing we could really do justice to in this sort of an interview, but can you give me sort of 30,000-foot view on where we are right now based on your experience?
Yeah, so I got involved, with this idea of base of the pyramid in 1999 when I got to the University of North Carolina, and Stuart Hart was there. And we formed, really led by Stu, something called the Base of the Pyramid Learning Lab. Mm-hmm. And at that time, we were trying to bring all the leading players in the base of the pyramid together on a biannual or twice-a-year basis. And it was interesting that we, trying to do that and identify them, it would often mean we had, a classroom, maybe right. 30 people. 35 people. And that was in 99. And now you look, a little more than a decade later, and the growth in the domain is just phenomenal. There are conferences, there are all kinds of events, and you get more in one conference than we felt was in the entire domain a decade or so ago. And with that growth, we have seen both an increasing number of ventures and success stories, but also challenges that we need to think about both at the venture level and at the community level. And that's what we want to do at the conference, is really think about what can we do to enhance ventures, and also what can we do at the community level to really address the bigger, if you will, meta problems that face a domain, so that we can have a robust, growing portfolio of enterprises supported by the development community, facilitated by nonprofits, enabled by entrepreneurs, and again, as well with existing companies.
And venture development is such a big issue on the pages of NextBillion. You've spoken to this many times and in your research and in your books. Talk a little bit about what are some of the goals in the conference, because a lot of what we see from entrepreneurs or hear from entrepreneurs is, they entered a market, a base of the pyramid market, a low-income market, with not the right product, not a advanced understanding of the market itself, and that also affected their workforce, obviously, and to some extent their investors. Talk to me a little bit about how you're going to address that in the conference.
Yeah, I mean, when we thought about this, and of course we can't tackle every possible issue in the conference, but we began to think about sort of three big areas that we wanted to focus on. One, what you're talking about, is really understanding the context in the base of the pyramid markets. The next is really thinking about venture development and how do we create better ventures across the different sectors, the for-profit, not-for-profit development. And then the last is really thinking about the role of the development community. And certainly, in the first one you mentioned, we see that as a significant issue, both as ventures begin to get started, they may not really understand the context. And what do we know about the tools, the approaches, the frameworks that these enterprises can use to really gain an understanding of what indeed are the needs? How do we think about a market in this space? And obviously one of the challenges is the base of the pyramid is a context that a lot of individuals and companies don't really understand that well. So that'll be one thread. And then the second piece of that is, once you launch a venture, how do you really understand what kind of value you're creating for those you seek to serve? And that'll be a second thread of this, is saying, and in this case, we'll look at really impact, to say what kind of impact are you having and how could you enhance that? And that'll be a second thread. What do we know about that? What a success has been? What are the frameworks that are out there? But also, where are the big gaps and what are we going to do about that?
Yeah, and if you're looking at the challenges, I'm sure you're also going to be looking at the success stories. How do you replicate business models? Can you replicate business models from geography, population to population? Are you also going to be talking about that within the summit?
Yeah, I mean, scale becomes sort of the biggest issue, I think, now. If we talk about where we want to go with the field, that we've seen a lot of pilots, a lot of entrepreneurs, and a lot of multinational initiatives, but not that many have really gone to scale so we can have the kind of impact we'd like to see. And we're going to be looking at that through three different lenses. One is from the entrepreneur, the startup venture, and sort of saying, what do you need, if you will, to accelerate? Not only what do you need to get started and to grow, but what are the resources you need to go really to scale? We'll look at that also from the role of larger companies. A lot of these companies have launched initiatives as part of a portfolio of activities. When you're trying to serve the base of the pyramid and develop an initiative within a larger organization, what are the challenges you need to address? What do we know about that? And where are the opportunities for us to make an even bigger impact? Mm-hmm. And then the last component of this is looking at nonprofits. And they've played a leading role in developing market-based approaches to serve the base of the pyramid. What have they learned? Where have they had success, and what are the roadblocks that they face for scale, and what can we do about it?
Yeah, and that's the last point in terms of the communities that you're representing here, is the NGO community and how they factor into all of this. Talk a little bit about that. Is there going to be a strong component on public-private partnerships and maybe some examples of what has worked in that regard?
Yeah, so when we think about communities, certainly the NGO is a very important one, and we tend to see them in playing several roles, including launching new ventures. There's another community too that transcends the NGO community, and we'll call that the development community. Mm-hmm. And that can be sort of the funders, sure. The supporters of these activities. So they're not necessarily launching ventures,
right,
but they're supporting those. And we see a significant role for those organizations, both in supporting ventures by providing financing like the impact investment sector has. There's a lot that provide technical assistance. So there's a sort of a resource provision component, but there's also a market creation component. What do we need to do to make the BOP context more market friendly? And that can be sort of things like creating awareness, facilitating supply, managing, enhancing distribution channels. It can also transcend to think about the public policy context. What do we need to do to make this a better enabling environment? And then the last piece is these institutions, these organizations can also think about it as institutions. What types of institutions do we need to connect all the different pieces together? Are there some meta institutions that the development community can be thinking about creating that help share knowledge and transcend one geography or one sector? And we see a big role for the development community in thinking about the future of the domain.
I mean, that's interesting because we hear a lot of sort of buzz language from the development community trying to act a little more nimble, trying to act a little more like the startup, and I'm sure many of these startups want to hear from the development community themselves and what their mindset is as they go forward in some of these initiatives. And that kind of leads me to this sort of to wrap up is who are the types of individuals that are going to be attending this conference? You touched on them a little bit, and what can they expect at the end? What are they at the end of this, at the summation, going to be armed with and be doing at that point?
I mean, so our summit is really designed to be, if you will, an ongoing conversation. So we've developed a set of sessions that are really focused not on people coming and telling us how great they are. I think there's enough conferences focused on that. What we really want to get, and we're really focused on, is getting people here, leaders across the sectors, that are interested in talking both about where they've seen success, but also where they're seeing challenges. We want to have an honest conversation, and frankly, if we want to move the domain forward, we really need to have these kinds of conversations. This isn't a motivational conference. This is a conference about where are we now and where do we want to go, and that's the real outcome. So folks that are coming to the conference, we're really looking for people that want to engage in these types of conversations. And I think they can get two benefits. One is sort of immediate, that in the sense that we are going to be talking about the challenges of today. We've got some of the leading players, across these different sectors talking about their experiences. And I think our attendees can walk away with some ideas they can use immediately on today's problems. Mm-hmm. But kind of throughout the conference or the summit, what we really also want to be doing is thinking about the BOP of tomorrow. What is it we as a community can aspire to achieve, and how can we get there? There's a lot of great individual effort and initiatives out there, but we have not yet really come together as a community to say, okay, where are the big challenges and what can we do, not as individuals, but as a community to address these? And that's a key component. And that latter piece, we really hope will be sort of seen as a seminal contribution to the domain where people can look back and say, I was at that conference. I was part of the development of that roadmap, and that roadmap has really taken the BOP to a whole new level.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll be following it on NextBillion, and we look forward to seeing some of the outcomes from the summit. It's coming up in October. We'll have all the details on NextBillion. And Ted, thanks for taking some time, and best of luck with the conference.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me today.